Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I thought it was about time for another light-hearted cultural comparison video. In this video I'm going to be talking about breakfast time in Germany, where I currently live, versus breakfast time in New Zealand, where I'm from. I have to say, one of my very first culture shocks when I first moved to Germany from New Zealand all those years ago was breakfast. I was quite surprised by how different breakfast was in Germany compared to breakfast in New Zealand. To be 100% honest, it was not a huge adjustment for me. I know some New Zealanders come to Germany and they take a long time to get used to the German style of breakfast because they're so stuck in their New Zealand ways. For me, it wasn't like, oh, that's different. It was more like, oh, that's different. Still looks good, I'm gonna give it a try. So before I get into the breakfast comparisons, I just want to make it clear I am not implying that every single German eats breakfast like this or every single New Zealander eats breakfast like this. I'm just going to be discussing the common traditional breakfast that we have in New Zealand and Germany. Okay guys, so let's get into it. There are actually quite a few different breakfast styles within New Zealand and in Germany. So one very popular breakfast style that we like to have in New Zealand is the continental breakfast, which is just kind of like a light breakfast. And in Germany they also have kind of like a continental breakfast, but I would sort of say it's more of a continental slash deli spread breakfast. This probably means nothing to you if you're from Germany, but basically the main difference between our continental style breakfasts is that in Germany they tend to have a lot of meat, like processed meats, and we call them deli meats, and cheese. In New Zealand we don't really have meat or cheese in this style of breakfast, but in Germany this is something you'll have a lot of. And so I would say that's quite a big difference between our breakfasts. So in New Zealand, a continental style breakfast will most likely consist of toast with some kind of spread. So we will have white toast bread or like a light brown toast bread or some kind of whole grain toast bread, or if you're like me and can't eat gluten, gluten-free toast bread. And what I found funny when I first moved to Germany is that what we would consider bread is not even considered bread in Germany. It's considered toast, even if it's not toasted. And so Germans, they kind of turn their nose up a bit at toast bread. But in New Zealand, this is what we consider bread. This is our version of bread, and you Germans will be laughing, I know. So on our toast we will have butter with some kind of spread. So it may be jam. So in America they call jam jelly, in Germany marmalade. Or we will have marmalade, which is very different to marmalade in Germany. Marmalade is just like an apricot jam, but it has really fine gratings of orange peel, so it's quite bitter, hard to explain, but that's something that we have a lot of in New Zealand. Or we will have something called marmite, which is, it's really hard to explain. It's kind of like a yeasty spread, and it's really dark brown, almost black, and it looks almost like tar. It's a really weird consistency. There's a Marmite brand in Britain, but it's quite different to the Marmite brand we have in New Zealand. And in Australia they love Vegemite, so they all are pretty much the same thing but taste slightly different. And I know that a lot of Germans are absolutely horrified by our Marmite. My husband was, that's for sure. I think it's because a lot of Germans, they just put way too much on their knife and then they just spread it on like Nutella. That is not how you do it. You have to put butter on and just a little bit of Marmite, and you have to just kind of dab it on. So we will either have jam, marmalade, Marmite, peanut butter or honey on toast, and that's just like a standard New Zealand breakfast. In Germany, on the other hand, they don't often have toast at all. That's just not really a thing in Germany. They have real German bread, and a lot of Germans like to go to the bakery really early in the morning and pick up a nice fresh loaf of bread and slice it themselves, and it's like a dense, dark bread in Germany. And there's all different varieties of bread, but the most common would be a German black bread. So it's not actually black, it's just really, really dark brown and very dense. It's never toasted. That's just like a crime in Germany to toast your bread. If a German family are all sitting down for their breakfast together, they'll most likely have this type of bread, or they'll have bread rolls, a variety of different bread rolls. And typically in Germany they will have their bread with like some deli meats. We would consider them deli meats, which is like processed meats like salami, leberwurst, which is kind of like a meat sort of sausagey spread, some kind of like ham, cold ham, so schinken, maybe a variety of cold cut sausages. I know when I say that people think I'm saying cold cat, but I'm actually saying cold cut. It's just my Kiwi accent, which means it's like meat served cold. And there might be a variety of nice cheeses, most typically a very thinly cut sort of light yellow cheese. Germans also like to have cream cheese that you just kind of scoop out and spread on your bread. My husband always calls it fresh cheese. Also, there's commonly a plate with thinly sliced tomato and maybe some cucumber sliced up. And Germans also like to have a soft boiled egg in an egg cup for breakfast. And one thing I've actually noticed in Germany is that a lot of Germans, instead of piling up all the toppings and making a sandwich like we would do in New Zealand for lunch, they usually like to have maybe just a thin slice of cheese on their bread and that's it, or a thin slice of salami. They don't tend to mix a lot of like different toppings together. Oh, and also in Germany, they sometimes like to have a sweet continental breakfast, which usually will consist of maybe a croissant or some kind of a bread roll or a piece of bread with jam on top, or maybe Nutella. And sometimes you can get like actual sweet bread rolls or like chocolate croissants. I don't know if that's super popular for breakfast in Germany, but I've definitely seen Germans eating a breakfast like this. So moving back to breakfast in New Zealand, a lot of us Kiwis like to have cereal sometimes, so we will have cornflakes or rice bubbles. Kids love Cocoa Pops and Honey Puffs. My mum would never buy them. We had to stick with the like sugar-free ones. We also have Wheat Bix, which I actually have also seen in Germany, just a different brand, which is just like a wheat kind of dry kind of cereal like block. You just have that with milk and some maybe chopped bananas or something like that on top. Some New Zealanders like to have muesli with maybe a bit of yogurt. And in Germany, like Germans also have cereals. Cornflakes or muesli is quite typical in Germany. I know my husband always calls cornflakes Kellogg's. Like no matter what brand it is, it's always Kellogg's for some reason. I don't know if all Germans do this. Another breakfast that New Zealanders like to have during the winter months is porridge, which is just cooked oats. I've also noticed that some Germans have oats for breakfast, but it's prepared quite differently. So we like to have our porridge cooked in milk, or some people like it with water, and most commonly we'll have a little bit of brown sugar sprinkled on top. And I've noticed Germans like to have their oats cold, so they have more like, I think you'd call them overnight oats, so they will like soften up in the milk. And I've noticed Germans eating their oats with yogurt and fruit, sort of like a dessert, like a cold kind of dessert type thing. Also in New Zealand, we like to have pancakes for breakfast. And I've also noticed a lot of Germans like to have pancakes for breakfast too, but they're actually prepared quite differently to the New Zealand pancakes. New Zealand pancakes are usually a little bit thicker than the German pancakes, and we usually eat them with golden syrup or maple syrup. In Germany, the pancakes are super thin. Like my husband is so good at making these really thin pancakes. Usually the German pancakes are sprinkled with a little bit of icing sugar, Puderzucker, or spread with Nutella and just kind of like rolled up. Okay, so now moving on to the big cooked New Zealand breakfast. If you haven't experienced this, you are missing out. And this is something we would have in New Zealand, like not all the time, maybe once a week, maybe once every few weeks. It's like the perfect breakfast if you've been out partying, like I used to do a lot of when I was younger, and you've got a little bit of a hangover and you just want something to dig into that's really like hearty. Like the New Zealand cooked breakfast is just superb. So there's different variations of the New Zealand cooked breakfast. You can go all out and just have everything on your plate, or just have a few things on your plate. So if you're gonna go all out, you would have a piece of toast with a fried egg or a poached egg. You will have bacon. So New Zealand bacon, it's very different to German bacon. It's thicker, it's crispier. You will maybe have some baked beans on your plate, which is like white beans in a tomatoey sauce. My husband was horrified when he first saw this in New Zealand, but it's really good, trust me. You might have a fried tomato, some fried mushrooms. Sometimes you might fry up some potatoes, maybe a couple of sausages. You can just really choose what you want to include and what you don't want to include, but all around it's just a good, hearty, delicious breakfast. And moving on to a German breakfast, which is traditional traditionally eaten throughout Bavaria, including Franconia, where I live. This breakfast includes white sausage, Weisswurst. This sausage is usually a mix between pork and veal with like chopped up parsley and a little bit of lemon juice, and it's typically boiled in its skin, so you actually can't eat the skin, you have to peel it off. And actually in our area of Germany they call it Weisswurst instead of Weisswurst. So this is traditionally eaten with a pretzel and a big jug of beer, and you also have it with a sweet mustard, and it's a really great combination. Who would have thought beer for breakfast, but it is a Bavarian tradition. So guys, I think I have basically covered breakfast in Germany and breakfast in New Zealand. There are a lot of differences but also similarities, and if you are German, please let me know if you think I have missed out anything or if I've explained something wrong. Breakfast may vary throughout different regions of Germany. I guess I'm just talking from my experience in Bavaria and different parts of Germany I have travelled to. If you're in New Zealand and you're watching this, maybe I've missed out something, maybe you eat breakfast differently to me. I'd love to hear all of your feedback in my comment section below. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, then don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. I would love you to consider subscribing to my channel. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram, and I will see you again really soon. Bye!